Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We have just started the webinar, so we will just let everyone join and filter through the system. But welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's fantastic to see the numbers rise up. So as you all join, welcome from our charities, the Addison's Disease Self-Help Group and Rareminds. This evening's webinar is about emotional well-being. As you all know, as Addison's and adrenal insufficiency doesn't just affect us physically, it affects us emotionally as well. And mental health support should be integral to the care we receive. So that is why we are here today. So whether you've just been diagnosed or you lived with it for a long time, everyone can do with extra support for their emotions and how they're feeling. It can be hard to open up about the rare reality of living with Addison's and adrenal insufficiency, but talking and offloading can have so many benefits, as well as the practical strategies that Rebecca from Rareminds will be talking through with us today, both for you and those who are close to you. So we hope you find this information helpful. So as we are here, we will introduce ourselves. So, hello, my name is Philippa. I'm the Communications and Health Manager here at the ADSHG, and I've also had Addison's disease myself for over 20 years. I was diagnosed in my early teens, and I'll now introduce you to Katie, who's going to tell you a bit about herself.
Thank you, Philippa, and welcome everyone. So I am Katie. I'm one of the trustees with the ADSHG, and I'm also a business owner and a 11-1 breathwork teacher. So I have been diagnosed with Addison's since 2021, so about 4 years now, during my nursing career, and I was diagnosed in an adrenal crisis. So I'm really excited to have come to this webinar tonight and learn from Rebecca. Rebecca, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
I would. Hello. Really, it's such a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you for inviting me to join you. My name is Rebecca, and I have been working with Rareminds since its inception in 2020. And prior to that, I was a nurse for 20 years before retraining as a psychotherapist back in the early 2010s. So I've had 10 to 15 years experience of counselling and psychotherapy, which with my nursing training came together quite neatly to be able to really find a place with Rareminds. And I've really enjoyed working with groups and do much of their one-to-one work as well. So it was a pleasure to be here this evening.
Thank you so much. And to everyone joining us, please do introduce yourselves in the chat. Tell us where you're joining us from today, if you like, what your association is with the condition, just so you can all connect and get to know each other a bit as well. So also now just moving on to the classic Zoom housekeeping, which all of you will be so familiar with. So this evening's presentation will be recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel after the event. But for privacy, only Rebecca's presentation will be recorded, not the Q&A section of the presentation. And all your questions will be asked anonymously as well. As I said, this is an interactive session, so please introduce yourselves in the chat. Throughout the presentations, use the reaction button, and of course, put your questions in the Q&A box. Please try and remember to put questions in the Q&A and your chat in the chat, because that just helps us hear from the administration side. For the questions, please note that we cannot answer direct medical questions specific to your individual health, as I'm sure you can all understand. And this is because we don't know you personally, so we don't have access to your medical records. So please phrase your question to apply to the topics and themes relating to well-being, Addison's, adrenal insufficiency as a whole, so we can learn and share together. And also, please, in the chat, be respectful and remember that while so many of you are expert patients, no advice given is direct medical advice, and this should always be sought from your own healthcare team. And also, for your own privacy, do not disclose personal or sensitive information about yourself in the Q&A or chat box. So thank you all very much. So I will now hand over to Rebecca.
Hello, everybody. So as Philippa has said, living with adrenal insufficiency, Addison's disease, is a challenge, and it comes with many challenges, but there's a lot to be lived with. and not just survived. So today we're going to think about how do we look after our emotional health and well-being whilst living with something such as Addison's disease or adrenal insufficiency. So just to start, a little bit about Rareminds, who we are and where we came from. So Rareminds was a vision created by our CEO and founder, Kim, who has had a family experience of living with rare diseases. And she felt that it is vital that the psychological and emotional aspects of living with a rare condition are recognised as an integral part of rare condition care, with access to specialist quality services for all. It's something we are lobbying for, trying to create, and hopefully one day we will feel that actually it is very much part of the diagnostic and support that one receives when living with a rare condition. So what are the challenges of living with adrenal insufficiency? Well, you as the people living with that condition will know much more than I, as you are experiencing it on a daily basis. And as Philippa said earlier, you are your experts. But having spoken with many people living with various forms of rare disease, there are many things that are similar. But I think that really there's something so important about acknowledging the impact of adrenal insufficiency, whether it's primary, secondary, or tertiary. Very often there is a very long, often traumatic, and difficult journey to diagnosis. The image you see of a boat is something we like to describe in Rareminds as the diagnostic odyssey. It's never something that happens overnight. The diagnosis doesn't come quickly. There are often periods of time where you question yourself, where other people question you, where you might feel that you're really not sure if this is real. Is it really happening? Are you making it up? All of those questions are things that happen all the time when you are living and trying to get somebody to hear you and say, yes, we're going to investigate this further and we will find out what's going on. So lengthy or traumatic diagnosis. There's often very, very low disease awareness in healthcare professionals with rare diseases. So sometimes it can feel like your desire to be met with and met by a healthcare professional with knowledge and expertise isn't founded. They don't arrive and can leave you feeling really questioning of whether this person really knows what you're experiencing. Do they know about the diagnosis? Are they going to help you? And that in and of itself can leave you feeling very much on a boat in the middle of the sea with no stability. What do I hold on to? What do I believe? What do I understand? Because a lot of what we learn and we know about ourselves when it comes to our health is often about the support we get from our medical professionals. And if that doesn't feel like it's stable and we can trust in it, we can often feel like we're sort of grieving in a way, that sense of, but I thought they would help me. I thought they would understand. I thought they would care. I thought they would know what to do. So that in and of itself, at the very beginning of your diagnostic odyssey, can leave you feeling very fragile, very vulnerable, and very unsure that actually anybody, for want of a better phrase, has got your back and is with you. So a lot comes with that. There's also, when living with adrenal insufficiency and the many conditions that you experience with it, there's a logistical burden of care and management. You are expected to be the expert. You are expected to understand and to make your case, be your advocate, which in itself leaves you feeling very heavy. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to understand. There's a lot to share. And actually, sometimes we just want to hand all that over to somebody else and go, no, just take care of me. I don't want to have to know all this. I just want you to tell me what to do. That in itself is a heavy burden to care for. Navigating the impact on work and social life. These are very significant parts of living with adrenal insufficiency because it impacts so many parts of our lives. Can I go out with my friends and have a good time in the way I think that was? Can I do that again? Will I ever be able to do that again? How do I manage work? How do I manage adrenal crisis and work? How do I work out how to fit all these parts of my life back together once this diagnosis has been made? Very, very difficult. Also comes along the emotional impact and symptoms. They're frightening. They're really scary. There is a risk to living with something like adrenal insufficiency. There is a risk that feels like, am I safe? Am I going to be safe? And carrying that emotional burden is very, very wearing, emotionally draining, and difficult. We talk about grief, change, and loss, and I think sometimes often the word grief is attached to the death of something or somebody. And actually, I think grief is a much bigger term, because we can feel grief-stricken when things are taken away from us, not only when something has been taken away through the end of life. So actually, the level of grief that can be experienced when we are diagnosed is enormous. Will my life ever be the same again? Will all the plans that I put in place be possible? Will I be able to do the career that I've planned to? How do I feel about all of that? How do I manage all of that? How do I come to terms with it? Do I find a place of acceptance for it? Do I fight it? How do I deal with it? Are questions that I'm pretty sure all of you will have asked yourselves at times. A part of living with any rare disease, and actually, if we're honest, a part of being human is actually living with uncertainty. We all live with the uncertainty that we actually don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. But one of the wonderful things about the human condition is we can sit with it back here. We don't actually have to acknowledge this thing called uncertainty most of the time, because we're just going to get on every day like everybody else is and believe that everything that we hope, plan for, dream of will happen. The fact that it's all pretty uncertain and there's nothing set in stone is irrelevant. We're going to leave that back here. But when you're going through your diagnostic odyssey with adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease, that sense of uncertainty comes forefront and centre. You can't avoid it. You can no longer ignore it. It's there. So actually, some of the things that we're going to talk about today is going to be, how does it go from being, it's all uncertain, I can't think of anything other than this, to actually finding a space where we can look through it, make plans, find ways of adjusting our plans. We know that the living with experience leaves interacting with emotional and physical. It comes together. There are two parts to this experience, and that's why we're here this evening, is to really think about how does the emotional impact of living with adrenal insufficiency or Addison's disease impact you. The stress and strain on couple and family life, very significant, can be very, very challenging to live with a condition that's so unpredictable at moments, how it impacts how we feel, how we act, how we behave, and the relationships around us. When living with a visible or invisible condition, the invisibleness of the adrenal insufficiency conditions can often mean that people say, you look well. What do you mean you're ill? You look fine. That can be very difficult because, again, it leaves you feeling like nobody gets it, nobody sees me, nobody understands. Do I have to keep repeating myself? Do I have to keep talking about it? And that can be very hard. In some ways, the risk of inheritance, I know that Addison's isn't a genetically inherited condition, but just being mindful that the inheritance risk and how that impacts people can be very, very powerful. And feeling very different and being alone, the sense of feeling alone, the sense of isolation that comes when living with a rare condition is hugely impactful. So there is no health without mental health. all health conditions impact our mental health, and all mental health can impact our physical health. So they are absolutely related. The relationship between physical and mental health is incredibly well established. We know that if we have poor mental health, that can impact physical health, the capacity to self-care, resilience, all of those things can be significantly impacted when living with mental health. And the poor physical health can lead to higher rates of depression, stress, anxiety, fears of the future, and all of those things. So they are interlinked and intertwined. So you don't have one without the other. The fact that somebody can say, "Oh yeah, no, I've been diagnosed, but I'm fine. It's not a problem at all. I'll just get through it. I'll just get on with it." I think we'd always want to question that, because actually, what is the impact? It's often bigger than we think. So the 7 domains of well-being, we feel at Rareminds that these are all things that are integral to actually how do we live well. Full stop, actually, not just how do we live well with adrenal insufficiency or Addison's conditions, how do we live well in our lives? So, coping with difficult feelings. This is something that often is not thought about, discussed, or actually acknowledged. As we grow, as we're children, we're actually often discouraged from addressing or acknowledging our difficult feelings. We often try and hide them because they can be uncomfortable for other people. And actually, if we want to live well, we need to acknowledge that we all have difficult feelings. Everybody has them. Everybody is helped when they are understood. Understanding your own feelings helps others to understand them. So coping with difficult feelings. Managing uncertainty, as I've talked to already, that idea that actually, how do I get from day to day? How do I plan a future when I don't know what it's going to look like? That's a very, very big part of living with your conditions. Managing stress is a really important part of living with adrenal insufficiency, because we all know the adrenal glands are part of our stress response. The cortisol is part of our way of managing stress and coping in stressful situations. So actually managing stress becomes a much bigger part of your lives than it does for some people. Couple and family relationships are a really important part of the 7 domains of well-being, because they are integral to how we function. We are pack animals, really. As human beings, we want to be in a space where there's more than just ourselves. So actually making sure we find ways of maintaining those relationships to the best of our ability, and really thinking about how we all impact and support each other, is really important. I think often you and your medical team is not given as much significance and importance as it could do, because actually, as we've spoken of, when you find yourself in a position where you perhaps don't feel that you trust your medical team, or you feel that you're questioning their capabilities, that can lead you to feeling very unstable in your care, which can lead you feeling unstable in life. So actually knowing your medical team and knowing what you need from them, knowing how to access that, is a really important part. Self-compassion. The one tip I would give to everybody about self-compassion is, can you find your friendly voice? Sometimes we can be incredibly hard on ourselves, harder than most people around us would ever be to us. And we can find ourselves giving ourselves a stern talking to, or a pull yourself together, or a don't be ridiculous, when actually, would you ever say that to a friend? No, some of you might, but how do we find that compassion that we would give to other people and apply it to ourselves in our moments of difficulty? Is it okay? Can we say to ourselves, it's been a tough day. It's okay to curl up on the sofa. It's okay not to feel that you do need to do everything you should be doing. It's okay to take time out. It's okay to look after yourself. Self-compassion is very, very important. There's a wonderful phrase about oxygen masks. If your oxygen mask isn't on, you can't put the other people's oxygen masks on. the first thing I say on the plane. How do we make sure we get the oxygen we need before thinking about other people? So actually think about how you care for yourself in this experience, not just how you present to other people and how you manage them. And also, how do you manage yourself? Good symptom management is really important. So the first thing we referred to is the difficult feelings. Now, some of these feelings you might recognize, and I wonder if you as a group of people can just take a few moments to think about, which of those words mean something to me? I'm not going to go through them all because I am aware of time, and it could take a long time to actually really give them all the space that perhaps they deserve. But I imagine that there are words on that slide that resonate with all of you. For some people, it might be anxiety, that sense of, will I have an adrenal crisis? What is going to happen? How do I manage this? There's a lot of anxiety around. But for some people, it might be, I will remain resilient. I will get through this. Some people might be a sense of shame in having to divulge or disclose that you're living with a condition that is challenging, and that you might not at times be able to turn up to work in the way that you would like to, or be the friend that you would like to be. We can't always judge those things, and there might be moments where you feel ashamed of that, but actually recognize it and acknowledging that you can only do what you can do is also really important. So think about the feelings that you might recognize. I think it's really important to acknowledge the impact that that moment of diagnosis can have. And often it's relief, as we've just seen in the slide before. It might be a sense of relief. You've now got a diagnosis. This is helpful. I can use this now. It also might be a sense of grief and loss. Oh, there was something. I was hoping I'd be told there was nothing. Now I have to accept it. Now I have to understand it. Now I have to figure out how to live with it. And sometimes when we have to go back into a hospital scenario, if we do have a moment where we are required to go into A&E or to be admitted to hospital, we can find ourselves revisiting the feelings around diagnosis and when that happened. And that can be really scary, because quite often we've sort of sidelined those feelings a bit. Let's just put them over there. We don't need to hold on to them. We don't need to deal with them every day. So when we suddenly are revisited by them because we have ended up in hospital, or we've had to have an emergency appointment, or we've had to go to an appointment we weren't expecting, these things can turn up for us. So being aware that having treatments, having any type of surgery, whether it's to do with your adrenal insufficiency and Addison's conditions or not, can provoke feelings around diagnosis for you. So just hold that in mind. It's not always something specifically to do with your specific diagnosis. It can also be other people's journey through medical diagnosis can reignite and provoke the feelings that you may have experienced. Disease progression. If things are changing, getting worse, being different, if suddenly that dose doesn't seem quite to be managing the things that it had been managing, that can be really scary, and again can provoke those feelings of change. Oh no, it's happening again. Oh, how do I manage this? All of those are really, really, take notice of them. Give yourself space. Understand that they're happening. It can be really helpful at this moment to talk to a friend, to actually think about what is happening for you. What am I feeling? Perhaps write it down. Perhaps go for a walk and let those feelings flow and just go, okay, but I've got this. We'll get through it. This is going to be okay. I don't need to panic. Drawing, painting and writing can all be really helpful when those emotions rise. And perhaps think about using music or distractions. Life stages and choices can be really difficult moments where things are changing. I want to look forward, but something's holding me back. I need to be able to see what's next. So other people's life moments changing might impact the way you feel. So all of these things are impactful. comparing lifestyles, being aware that other people's lives are not the same as yours, your life is not the same as theirs, and noticing your limitations and your difficulties can be really hard. So think about what you're feeling, acknowledge what you're feeling, and give it space. As you'll see on the next slide, when we're coping with difficult feelings, they might need to have some airtime. It can be really helpful to try and notice what and how you're feeling. Be curious. Find your curiosity. What is it I'm feeling? What is it telling me? Where did it come from? Try and find space to accept the feeling rather than pushing it away, saying, oh, I don't like that. That feels uncomfortable. I don't want to have it. How would it be if you took a moment to go, okay, this is a feeling. What is it? What's it telling me? What can I do with it? How do I bear it? How do I manage it? Rather than trying to push it away. Something that can be really helpful is to remember that we are not our feelings. Being able to describe a feeling can help us feel less overwhelmed by it. So being more able to think about it, you can be more in control or less fearful of it. So trying to push thoughts or feelings away often takes more energy than actually letting them in and giving them space. They often just clamour for more attention. They're a bit like toddlers. You know, if you try and get them to be quiet, they get louder and bigger. So actually just saying, okay, let me see you. Let me hear you. What are you telling me? Learning to accept the feelings we have and be curious about them and where they're coming from can really help us. So what might help that feeling feel more bearable? Or what might help it pass rather than just, no, don't want it? Notice yourself when describing an emotion. Try and change the phrase from I am anxious to I feel anxious. It is part of you. It is not the whole of you. So, coping with uncertainty. As we've spoken of as human beings, it's something we actually live with all the time. But when diagnosed with a rare condition, such as adrenal insufficiency, that uncertainty becomes full view. What does my future look like? What does my life look like? What am I supposed to do with this? What will I be doing? How do I make plans? All of those become very real. And we can't really ignore it as much as perhaps we have in the past. So the short-term uncertainties, which are about how things happen today, tomorrow, next week, will today be a good day? Will I be able to get through work? Will I be able to get to work? How am I feeling? Is something happening? Should I be aware of something? All of those thoughts are at what we call our micro, short-term uncertainties. Will the GP call back? Will I get the appointment I'm waiting for? Will my prescription be ready? All of those things. Will this prescription help? Those are our short-term micro uncertainties, and the longer macro uncertainties are, is this going to get worse? How will I be in a year's time? What is this going to look like for my future? Will there be a decline? Will I be stable? What will change? And also the ultimate uncertainty that we all do live with is, how does this mean? What does this mean about my death? Do I need to worry about that now? Is that something that's suddenly come into focus for me? Or can I leave that to one side for the moment and focus on what I can do? So those are uncertainties. So if we think about uncertainty, uncertainty is ultimately not knowing. We don't know. We don't know if tomorrow's going to be a good day or not. We'll only know when we wake up tomorrow. So finding ways that we can manage the what ifs, the not knowing, is really important, because living with uncertainty is really hard. We try and avoid it as human beings. We don't like it. We like to know. We like to be able to hold on to something. We like predictability. But the truth is, we can't avoid it. So it's really helpful to find ways of acknowledging What feels uncertain in your life now, right now? How can I tolerate that uncertainty? What can I know and what can I feel certain about? So rather than allowing yourself to go down the what if, allow yourself to say stop, pause. What do I know? What do I know today? When we don't know things, we tend to fill the void. We tend to fill the space. So whilst trying to hold on to what we know, there's often those other things around going, oh, but, oh, what about this? What about that? And anxiety is generally what we call that sort of moment of, ah. So anxiety is our brain and body working together to try and keep us safe. It's a very, 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 very long-held safety mechanism for human beings. It prepares us. It's often a side effect of uncertainty, because if we don't know what's going to happen, we need to be prepared for the unprepared thing to happen. So we need to be sort of ready all the time. So that's the anxiety kicking in. And it can manifest in different ways. So try to notice, how do you respond to your anxiety? Do you push it away, deny it? It's not a big deal. I'm fine. Don't make a fuss, just ignore it. Or do you find yourself in that space of preoccupation where it's going round and round and round? I can't stop thinking about it. It'll be okay if I just keep focused on it. If I can keep it here, then it will be okay. I need to know the answer. Those are often the things that we hear in our mind when we're thinking about anxiety. Living with anxiety and fear also make you feel angry sometimes, because it's provoking that feeling of, I just want this to go away, stop, I don't want to have it. And we can feel very disappointed, frustrated, lonely, sometimes hopeless, and you might lose your confidence. So these are all things that are part of living with uncertainty. So finding ways to manage living with the anxiety and the uncertainty are really important. As I just said, when we're learning to live with not knowing, is we tend to fill the void of not knowing with our fears and our anxieties. It's a little bit like if you hear parts of a conversation and there's something in there that provokes something for you, we find ourselves answering the worry without really knowing what the rest of the conversation was. So actually try to recognize if you're doing a 2 plus 2 equals 10, because actually, is it helpful? Or could you say, I don't know the answer to that yet. I will know the answer to that when I need to know the answer to that. So for the time being, I'm going to let that fear leave, because I'm holding on to what I know rather than what I don't know. So ask yourself if your fears and anxieties need or can be addressed right now, or not. Reassure yourself you will deal with them when you know more, or when you need to, so you're able to stay much more in the present. When we are constantly worrying about the future, we miss out on actually what's happening now. And sometimes what's happening now is the good bit. And we only realise that when we've left it. So actually finding ways of going, I don't know. I like to use something called the cognitive pause. When you feel your head going round and round with what ifs, just go stop. Press the pause button, the emergency stop button in the tube, on the train, in the lift. Stop. Is this helping me? Can I answer it? No, not yet. Okay, but I will be able to answer it one day, so I'm going to let it go. It will come back and I will be able to do the same thing again, because today I'm holding on to what I do know. Having backup plans is a really important part. of living with uncertainty. Because sometimes when we are living with a condition where things aren't predictable, we can find ourselves withdrawing from society because that might feel a little bit more manageable and a little bit more controllable. I'm not going to go out in the world because something might happen and I might not be able to manage it. So I'm going to stay in my safe space where I know something is more manageable. So what I would say is find ways of exploring plan A, plan B, plan C. I want to go out for dinner with my friends. Okay, that's plan A. I'm going to go out for dinner with my friends. I'm going to make a date. I'm going to put it in the diary. I'm going to go. Plan B can be, okay, if I don't feel great on the day, I might actually just let them know that I'm not going to stay for dinner, but I will come and meet you for a drink. And then plan C can be, if I really don't feel up to it, we let our friends know, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it today. I'm not feeling great at all. Can we rearrange? So you don't leave it open. You say, we'll be back to it. Can we rearrange? So that's plan C. Rather than not doing anything, we try and find that space, what's possible, rather than what's not possible. So the stress bucket, we all live with a stress bucket. We all have it inside us, and it gets filled with ongoing demands, big life events, day-to-day and week-to-week issues, and as we all know, the unpredictability of the world around us and the challenges of listening to news and being able to process all of those things. So ordinary life can be demanding enough. When we add into that living with adrenal insufficiency and Addison's disease, that is another part of your stress bucket. So adding in the demands of living with a rare condition, the uncertainty, the symptoms and side effects, coping with difficult thoughts and feelings, as we've mentioned, family and friends, healthcare team, and fears about the future. That bucket can get full pretty quickly because that bottom part is constantly actually filled with your condition. So how do we look after our stress bucket? How much room your rare condition takes up. See if you can moderate that. There'll be times when your rare condition takes up more. If you know you've got appointments coming up, if things are feeling unstable, then that will be more. But there'll be times when it's less. So how much room it takes up affects how much emotional capacity you have available. The emotional capacity you might need for managing life's ordinary stresses and demands, and vice versa. So being aware of the ebb and flow of feelings and emotions and what is going on in your life will give you an indication as to where you are with your stress bucket. We all carry stress a little differently, so how do you know when your stress bucket is filling up? How we think, how we behave, and how our body feels is all linked to stress. So we might find ourselves tipping into behaviours that we know aren't the best for us, such as eating more than we should or types of food that aren't particularly healthy, or perhaps drinking when we don't normally drink, or drinking more than we feel we should, smoking, drugs, compulsively strolling, general irritability. Those are behaviours that we might turn to when we're feeling a bit stressed. We might find feelings of being jittery, being more tearful. Those are also possibilities, and our physical body might change when we're dealing with stress, and our thinking might become a little bit more challenged, a bit more negative, perhaps self-critical and pessimistic sometimes. So be mindful of those things. Remember, I said at the beginning of today, find that space of self-compassion. Find a way of being a bit kinder to yourself when you're feeling stressed and your bucket is full. Find ways of talking to people, expressing our feelings, sharing our fears, sharing our emotions will naturally allow some of your stress bucket. We like to talk about putting a tap on your stress bucket. How do I turn my tap so that things can flow out of it and the amount in my stress bucket can lessen? When we live with uncertainty, it can be really important to find a way of reimagining our future. The future that you had imagined might not be the one that looks like is coming. So make conscious decisions about your priorities and think about what is possible today. We might not be able to do all the things we want, all the things we hope, and all the things we plan, but we might be able to decide what's possible today. Ask for help where you can from who you can. Who is in your team? Who are the people that you can share your fears and feelings with and that feel able to be there to support you? And break big tasks into smaller ones. Everest isn't climbed in a day. Take one step at a time when there's something big and important approaching you. If you find it hard to ask for support, it can be really helpful sometimes to reframe it. Reframe it to, how would it feel if you give somebody else the opportunity of helping you? If somebody asks for your help, how do you feel about it? Why would anybody else feel differently if you ask them for help? Allow yourself to believe that other people might be available for you. And accept limitations. This can be really hard, but just do the next thing to prevent overwhelm and difficulties. No can be hard, but sometimes it can be a really necessary step, finding that word. No, I can't do that at the moment. Working with your medical team. As I spoke in one of the earlier slides, when you're on that diagnostic odyssey, as we like to call it, to diagnosis, you can feel quite abandoned sometimes by your medical team. It can feel very difficult to find a team that you engage with and that you feel are able to give you the support that you need and that you are looking for. So it's really helpful to actually say to yourself, okay, this is my team. They might not be perfect. They might not be exactly as I want them to be, but how do I help them be what I need them to be? So sometimes this can be about actually helping yourself to help your team. So before you go into any appointments, and I'm sure a lot of you do this already, what do you want from this person? What do you want from your healthcare professional? It can feel very hard, and particularly in a system where it feels like there isn't much available sometimes. It is really important to find that space for you to train your healthcare professional to be the support that you need as an individual. Let them know what you're looking for. Enter the room with the questions that you have. Make notes. We need to be able to trust our medical teams so that we can have a belief that they're on our side. So try and separate previous bad experiences from every hospital experience, because there will be good ones, but there will also be bad ones. So go into each new experience with a view, let's see what today brings. Let's see what's going to happen. How might this pan out? What do I want from them? What do I want to ask them? What answers am I looking for? Remember, it is your healthcare professional's job to look after you, not the other way round. Don't feel unable to ask a question because you don't want to burden them or you don't want to put them on the spot. That is not your job. Your job is to leave with as many answers as you can and feel that you trust them, you believe them, and you know that they're there to support you. What is a priority for you before you go into the appointment? Be clear about what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And if you feel something hasn't been heard in an appointment, say it again. Allow yourself to say at the beginning of an appointment, just to let you know, I've actually got 5 or 6 questions that it would be really helpful if you could answer before we finish today. Let them know what you're looking for. Put yourself in the position that you are able to ask for their support. Personal, couple and family relationships are always challenged when living with rare conditions, particularly ones that involve adrenal insufficiency. So any illness, stress and hardship do not always bring out the best in us. It can provoke a lot of difficult feelings, as we've said, and when we're in that space, it can be hard to feel compassionate towards others because we're going through a really hard time, but it also can be hard to be compassionate to ourselves. So we are often the most difficult with those that we love. So it can be really helpful to Say that out loud. I'm really sorry. I know I am being really hard. I know I'm being tricky. I understand this is hard for you too, but I do still need something from you. In couple relationships, the things we find most annoying about someone are often the things we fell in love with them first. You know, there's too much. They're loud, they're gregarious, they want to go out all the time. Those things can be really hard when we aren't able to meet that person in the place we were in when we met. So bearing that in mind can be helpful. We all have different personal coping strategies. So what might be helpful to you, if you are somebody that wants to talk about your feelings and wants to share things, might be really difficult for somebody who's what we call an internal processor, where they figure out all their answers internally and they go through it on their own. These can lead to really difficult dynamics. Some of you may have heard about different ways of attaching, different attachment styles. Some people might attach in a quite anxious way, and some people might attach in an avoidant way. And when those two are in stressful situations, we revert back to those types. So it can be a little bit harder to get what we need from our partners. And these differences can be really annoying or actually really upsetting. So when we're thinking about managing relationships, what do I need right now? Finding ways of speaking to that, finding ways to say, I need, I feel, I would like, can be really helpful. Build a support network around you. Make sure that you find those people, those friends, those might be your partner, but it might be your mum, it might be a sibling, it might be a friend, it might be a work colleague. Find the people around you so that you can build that network of support of people that understand and you know you can be supported by, and know who is good for what. Some people will be brilliant at leaving a meal on the doorstep when they know you're having a tricky time. Other people might be great at taking you to a hospital appointment, and some people might be really good at sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and listening. But not everybody is going to be good at everything. So find your people, understand, and some people will disappoint you. Some people will not be what you want them to be. So it's really important to give yourself permission to seek elsewhere, to find who is available for you in other places, and go back to that space of self-compassion. It's okay to ask for more. It's okay to have needs. As I've just said, self-compassion, you did not ask for or expect a rare condition to be part of your life. It wasn't in the plan and it appeared from nowhere. So we have to cope as best we can, and sometimes not as well as we'd like. And we are often much harder on ourselves than we are on other people. Rare conditions happen whilst we are making other plans. They appear, they come from nowhere, and we're rarely prepared for it. So remember that living with a rare condition is psychologically and emotionally challenging. Looking after your mental health is an integral part of living with your condition. Self-awareness is key. Try and find the ways of recognizing your stress signs, actually engaging with what you're feeling, and finding words to describe it to other people. And remember, managing the psychological challenges of living with a rare condition takes emotional energy. Symptom management and supports mental well-being. So when we are, as I am sure all of you are very well versed in this, when our symptoms are controlled, we are able to feel more control of our mental health and our physical health. So thinking about all of the things that go with that: pain, mood, sleep, fatigue, diet, appetite, all of those things. So don't struggle alone with when things are difficult. Talk to someone you trust, someone, perhaps a personal friend or somebody personal or professional with expertise in the area. Find spaces to speak. Some really helpful tools around living with rare conditions is mindfulness. This can be really helpful when managing pain and anxiety. Breathworks, I think Katie said she was a level 1 Breathworks trainer. So I'm sure Katie will be able to add extra um, sort of a knowledge to this when we come to our Q&A. But breathworks and mindfulness are both really good ways of managing anxiety, stress, and physical symptoms, because often if we can manage our breathing and how we react to our physical symptoms, we can actually in turn manage them too. So that's a really important part of actually living with adrenal insufficiency and Addison's conditions. Spoon theory can help. I think all of you hopefully can see the QR code on your screen. If you take that, it will take you straight to the spoon theory page. And spoon theory really is a way of thinking about how do we manage our energy, because sometimes that energy can suddenly deplete when we're not expecting it, or we might know that we just don't have as much energy as we would hope to have. So actually think about it we have 15 spoons. How do I want to use them today? I might need 3 spoons to get out of bed and get dressed and get showered, and I might need 5 spoons to go to work. What does that leave me with? So just think about how can you manage your energy so that you can do what you want to do, but also hopefully do some of the things you would like to do as well as need to do. It's not just all about meeting the needs. So think about how many spoons you have. How would you like to use them? Is there something that must be done that needs to take spoons? What can be prioritised? Can I postpone something? Can I move something from one day to the next if that might help me? Can I save spoons from one day? Can I say, I know tomorrow's going to be busy, so I'm going to have a quiet afternoon and save some spoons? Sometimes some activities take more spoons one day than they did a day before. So being mindful that flexibility and being able to shift a little with it is always helpful. It's not rigid. Other relaxation and exercise and techniques that can be really helpful is a grounding technique. When we feel anxiety rising and feel ourselves sort of having that slightly, everything's too much, I can't actually breathe, I don't know what to do, it's overwhelming, I can't focus, I can't think. Find a space where you can sit in your chair, feel your bottom on your chair, feel your feet on the floor, really put your hands on your legs. If everybody can do this now, it's really a good way of just feeling in your body, feet on the floor, hands on your thighs, bottom on the chair. And then think about, okay, 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can taste, 2 things I can touch, 1 thing I've used taste already. 1 thing I can taste, 2 things I can touch, 3 things I can feel. I've lost myself. Katie. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can touch, 2 things I can taste, 1 thing I can smell.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So really the point is that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you can move them around depending on where you are. But the thing is just focusing on 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you bring yourself back to your body, you bring yourself back to the space you are in now. Box breathing is one where people have one of these around and about, thinking about breathing in, holding your breath, breathing out. The QR code on this slide will take you to the Wellbeing Hub, which is produced by Rareminds, which has lots more techniques for you to use and think about, as well as box breathing and grounding. There's the QR code for the Wellbeing Hub. This is something that you can give to other people, share the link with other people. It's a really helpful place to begin to think about how you felt through diagnosis, how it's impacted you, how it's impacted your emotional well-being. There's lots and lots of techniques, therapist tips and strategies on there to help support you and your emotional well-being whilst living with your rare condition. There's also podcasts that are on Spotify and YouTube, thinking about rare diseases and living with rare conditions. I think it's really important just to say that Rareminds is not a crisis space. So be aware of what you need and when you need it. There's general mental health support organisations such as the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, where you can access them, and these you can find counsellors and specialists in your area. There are also places like Samaritans. I'm just going to move on to that slide now. Crisis support. So you've got Samaritans. Sometimes I recommend that taking a photo of this slide can be really helpful, just to keep it on your phone so that you know who is available and how to access them if you are in an emotional crisis and feel that you need support that isn't available elsewhere. Just quickly going back one slide to helpful resources. There's 3 books there that we recommend through Rareminds. They're not specific to adrenal insufficiency and Addison's disease, but they are very much about living well with chronic conditions and how do we manage them. There's also, as we said earlier, Headspace, Budify and Calm are 3 really, really good apps to explore mindfulness, grounding techniques, breathing techniques, and how do we really find that way of living with what we know now rather than worrying about the future all the time. And finally, thank you. That's the end of my slides. I am aware we've gone over time a little bit, so I do apologise for that, but there's quite a lot to get in. So I am now going to open the floor to the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. That was absolutely fantastic, as I hope you can see from all the reactions that are popping up on the screen now. Lots of thumbs up and hearts. And that really spoke to the rare resilience that we all need as people with Addison's and adrenal insufficiency. So thank you so, so much. So we will now move on to our Q&A, as you said. So thank you to everyone who submitted a question in advance, because that's fantastic. It means we've been able to group those so we can hopefully get through as many as possible, as well as getting to the live questions that have been coming in as well. So keep popping those in the box. Have we had a couple of live ones coming in, Katie, just to check?
Yeah, we have about 11 so far. So if anyone else, I see someone has popped into the chat. If you can pop your question into the Q&A, if anything else comes up, and we'll get to those as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So I think, Rebecca, we'll start with one that came up a lot in the pre-submitted questions was handling health anxiety. People just knowing that we'll get low cortisol, at some point we may go into adrenal crisis. That's a really scary thought. A lot of us can feel like a ticking time bomb is how, I know I certainly felt about it in the past. So one question we had was, since being diagnosed, I worry about being sick, and it panics me eating out in case I get food poisoning. Any tips to help with this?
Well, I think it's always really helpful when we're living with health anxiety to put a few things in place. So I would say, from a practical side, it is okay to say, oh, choose your restaurant wisely. We're not going to pop out for street food. It's going to be a case of research, doing, making sure you feel comfortable in the space, making sure you're there with people that can support you if something were to go awry, if something was to change. But also holding on to the idea that you are able to cope. You are able to manage, believing that you have all the things in place to support you, knowing that you live with adrenal insufficiency, knowing that you know where to go if you are in a crisis, you know what to do if you are in a crisis. Believe that you have all those things covered and have confidence in that, because actually part of the living with the uncertainty is having faith in, I know what to do when things go wrong. Because the reality is none of us know when we're going to get sick. None of us know what is going to impact how we are feeling today. But what we can do is make sure we have the things that we need, medication, telephone numbers, support network available. And if something goes wrong, we deal with it. We do what we need to do. There will be moments of panic. We breathe. We say, what do I know? We say, what do I need to do? It can be really helpful. I'm sure a lot of you have maybe all of you have the wristbands that actually alert people to, there you go, the bracelets that alert other people to the fact that you are living with a condition that can change quickly and that people might not see you as carrying, living with something that can make you unwell. But actually, we have to work out what's possible whilst living with what we live with rather than what's not possible. We don't want to make our lives and world smaller. We want to acknowledge that there can be problems. It can be difficult. What do I know? What can I hold on to? What can I take with me as a bit of a comfort blanket and actually carry on living? Does that make sense, Philippa?
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And it really speaks to those things that you're saying earlier about when we feel that panic rising, there are things we can do in that appointment waiting room or, with the breathing and things like that. But also what we hear from so many people in our community is that they just learn to listen to our bodies so well. So if you're worried about your low cortisol symptoms, I mean, I don't know about you, Katie, but when I was adjusting, I kept a list on the notes app on my phone of, what were my symptoms, and that really helped me in those moments. Yeah, learning our own triggers.
Absolutely. I think
Absolutely.
having faith in that. Sorry, Casey.
No, go ahead. Yeah, I mean, myself, it takes time to understand and this new almost body, this new kind of way of how your body feels about different situations, things that might not have been stressful before, might have a different impact. And I think that's a really good tip is actually writing down on your notes app. Like I know now, okay, headache, or if I get like starry eyes, okay, that means my cortisol is low, and that has taken years. So I think it's just, yeah, writing down notes is a really good tip because then you start to understand your body a bit better. Yeah. Yeah.
And actually, just to jump to our further support page, because that's got those links on it on our stress page. We do have bullet points on things like that for specifically for Addison's and adrenal insufficiency on learning to listen to your body. What does
Yeah.
adrenal crisis anxiety mean to you, and all of that sort of thing. And of course, though, we can't speak about, low cortisol and adrenal crisis without noting that the treatment we receive in A&E inpatient can be far from perfect and deeply scary for some people. And we had a lot of questions come in around that. Someone phrasing it as I panic that if I need support in A&E, they won't treat me correctly as adrenal insufficiency is a rare condition. I've not had a great experience since being an outpatient and have had to switch hospitals, which has compounded this worry. Now, you spoke about that a bit, Rebecca, but what more can be done to support us within that?
It's really difficult because rare disease are often misdiagnosed, mistreated, and sadly, not everybody that we meet in the medical environment, healthcare professionals are well versed in all conditions, and they're not experts. If only they were, but we have to live with that because that's the reality. So I think there's two things. It can be really helpful to acknowledge you've had a bad experience, but believe that there can be good ones too. Because sometimes when we become focused on the negative, that went wrong, that wasn't right, that didn't happen, it actually starts that we end up in a space where we're already defensive and looking for the negative before we've even got there. So just trying to take a moment, press the pause button as I spoke of earlier, take a breath and go, it might not be like that this time. Actually hold on to the possibility it could be different. It's actually also really helpful when you enter any of those spaces to let somebody know that you have had a bad experience, that things have gone wrong, and that you are quite scared, fearful, anxious that it might happen again. Because actually, if people are aware, they might not be able to be an expert, but they might be able to manage how they communicate with you. They might be able to do what they can do slightly differently that leaves you feeling a bit more supported than you were in your very negative experience. So speak to it. Don't go in assuming it's going to happen, but share your experiences. Say, just to let you know, this is what happened last time. I was in two minds whether to come, but I know it's what I need to do, so I'm just sharing with you. Find the way of communicating with your team what your needs are. I know what I experience, I know what I need, I am the expert. This is what happened last time. Please listen to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I
Don't
think
dismiss me.
mm, And I think for the very fact that people are here today, we always say, knowledge is power. You go into these experiences, you're aware that they are not going to have the expert knowledge potentially. So you go in, prepared with your steroid card, with your hospital folder, with your advocate, if it's possible for you to have that person. If it's an adrenal crisis situation, having administered your emergency injection. And of course, things won't go smooth, potentially won't go smoothly from there, or they might go smoothly from there. But you've done the best that you can do in that situation. And also you've got the toolkit behind the scenes to do it. You've been there before, you can do it again situation as well. And also knowing that our charity is here working away with hope to support those sort of experiences, working on GP education modules, working with critical care and things like that. So you're not alone in it. We're all there working together on the practical side. Another one we had coming quite a lot before I think we'll pick up a couple of live questions after this, Katie, just so
Yeah.
people can get their questions in too, was around identity, which I think, and with our condition, which I think can strike us when we're diagnosed, as well as in my case, over 20 years later. How can we balance acknowledging our condition whilst not completely letting it define us?
Well, it's a little bit like the phrase I used earlier, rather than I am anxious, I feel anxious. You are you are not adrenal insufficiency, you live with it. It is part of you, it is not the whole of you. And actually finding ways of expressing your individuality, yourself, making sure you hold on to those. Like I said before, finding ways of planning experiences and socializing and things that allow you to still do the things that you love, but that might need tweaking. You might not be able to do it in the same way, but find what's possible rather than what's not possible. So really thinking about what are the things that do define me. You know, I sing in a choir. If I couldn't sing in a choir, that would be really, really hard for me. If I was living with adrenal insufficiency, I might only go for half the rehearsal rather than the whole rehearsal. It doesn't mean it's not possible, but we need to think about how do you identify yourself? Because sometimes the condition can take over us, and it's actually about finding the way of bringing it from this size to here. So it's still there. We're not going to get rid of it. It doesn't become invisible. It doesn't leave us, but it is actually something that we can work into our lives and have a life. So knowing how you want to be seen in the world actually is really important. Knowing how you feel about being seen and not seen, and finding ways of communicating that to people. I think particularly if you're diagnosed in adolescence, that can be incredibly difficult because you're trying to figure out who you are anyway, as we all have to at that stage of life, but also then you're carrying this new definition of who you are, and trying to fit that in can be very, very difficult, particularly as parents often can feel the need or the desire to look after you. So it can be very difficult to find that space. So I think just giving yourself, again, that self-compassion. What do you want? How do you want to be seen? How do you want to manage your adrenal insufficiency? That in itself can just make it a little bit smaller.
Mm. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was great. I love the description of particularly when you're firstly diagnosed, it's huge. It's a massive part of your life and a massive upheaval and change. And it can get to a point where it's a part of your life, like almost like a little pie, and it's a little square of your
absolutely.
life, and you can. But I do resonate with that in the first. diagnosis, first few months, it's like your whole life, and you think this is like my life forever. I'm Addison's disease, so like all over my face. But actually, you can learn to live with it, and I think being prepared is key. For me, I love traveling, like, and I when I was diagnosed, I was like, I'm never getting on a plane again. I was petrified to get on a plane. But that gradually, I took a little step. I took a bus trip somewhere, and then I took a bit of a further, gradually putting myself outside of your comfort zone. So I think you can do it, but give yourself grace and a bit of time as you adapt. Yeah, and I think the confidence comes definitely over time to do those things. I think. What do you think, Philippa? I mean, what's some?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And also the confidence grows through the roller coaster of it all as
Mm.
well. Like you won't just be on your meds and fly high. Well, you're gonna have a dip. You might get another health condition that's gonna flare everything up again. And then you've got to go, you feel like you're going through it all again. And then again it comes from, like you said, then you build your confidence back again, Katie, like you're saying, all those small steps, and you just become, you build your resilience again, and you put in all of these supports that you can to make that happen. So yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. So live questions that have come in, Katie, how are they looking?
Yeah, we've had a good few come through. So one of the questions that seems to be kind of a thread coming up is all about fatigue. So mainly like living with fatigue. One of the questions was living with Addison's, is it normal for people to need more sleep and be severely impacted by the occasional late night or sleepless nights? That was one of the questions, and some tips for managing fatigue. So trying to find that balance. Um,
So I think yes, my understanding, I don't live with Addison's disease or adrenal insufficiency, but yes, I think fatigue is a very, very normal part of it. So I would say that it might be that burning the candle at both ends in a way that you used to is no longer a possibility. But actually, fatigue is manageable. I think the one thing to acknowledge about fatigue is it's not that you're tired. It's literally as if somebody's unplugged you.
Mm.
And it doesn't matter necessarily whether you go and have a, half-hour snooze or not, or have an early night. It's not always going to reboot you in the way that it may have done in the past. So actually finding those strategies, like I spoke about the spoon theory, is a really good way of saying, okay, I know I've got a busy weekend. So how can I manage my week in a way that perhaps gives me a couple of hours extra in bed or resting or able to take a break during a work day if I'm working from home, or what is possible for me to put in place that actually allows me to acknowledge that my batteries deplete quickly. It's about
Definitely.
it's about taking care. It really is about self-care. It really is about understanding I'm not tired. This is fatigue. This isn't just going to disappear. I've got to figure out how to manage this. And having done quite a lot of research on it, I do think that spoon theory is the most easy to take on board as a way of being going forward. So if you find your number of spoons, let's say 15, and you know that on a good day, on an average day, you can get up, shower, go to work, come home, cook dinner, but then it's pretty much out. But you know that you're going to want to go out on a Friday. So how do you take a few spoons in the week back so that you're able to do that? So it really is about pacing is the other word that's used. If you know you're going to have a busy Saturday, Sunday, have a quieter Saturday. If you know that you've got something big coming up, find ways of actually going to bed earlier for a few nights on the trot. It's all of those things. But I think it is about acknowledging that fatigue isn't tiredness, it is part of the condition. Being kind to yourself about it. Don't try and push through it. That doesn't help. Don't tell yourself to pull yourself together and keep going. That doesn't help. What helps is saying, okay, fatigue is visiting. Right. I'm
Mm.
going to look after myself.
Yeah. Definitely. A lot of people in our community describe it as having like an Addy day for sure, because it's not your average rest day. It's not necessarily a fun day binging Netflix, which, some people might think it is. So like having that self-compassion to say to yourself, like, I'm needing to rest well today for my own health. And that is why of course, everyone always clear yourself for other health conditions that might be related to if you're really struggling and no, hang on, this isn't normal. But the spoon theory I have found so valuable personally. Katie, how do you deal with those really difficult fatigue days?
Yeah, quite similar, like that. I mean, it's first I recognize, okay, I'm feeling this way is the first thing to do. Like, because sometimes, as you said, you can just push it aside and be like, oh, I'll be fine. I'll just, but it's actually recognizing that and be like, okay, so what can I take out of today that doesn't need to be done today? So I'll say, okay, maybe it's something at work, or maybe it's some commitment I have on some like social thing. I'm like, no, I can't do that today. So I'll prioritize what can be pushed to another day. Like, if you've kids and stuff, it's hard. It's really, really hard, but it's just about prioritizing and asking for help as well. So if you have a supportive family, if you have someone you can call to help if you have kids or different things like that. But I think the first thing is just recognizing it and accepting it. I'm feeling tired today, and what can I do about that? Like the spoons is a great theory. Yeah, I found that just having self-compassion for myself and not getting annoyed. I used to get quite annoyed. I'd be like, oh, I shouldn't be feeling tired, but it's okay. And then once you rest, you feel better than the following days. So yeah, that's it. Just listening to yourself and taking the rest when you need it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
Definitely.
Not giving
yeah,
yourself a hard time.
exactly.
One thing I would say, I think quite often we find ourselves using the word should. I should be able to do that. I should
Mhm.
be able to do this. I should have gone there. I think it can be quite helpful in life if we can leave should aside and actually replace it with the word could.
Mm,
I could do that, or I could choose not to. I could do that, and it might end up me feeling worse for more days, or I could choose not to do that and actually look after myself and have a better day tomorrow. Because when we take should out, which is sort of full of judgment and finger wagging, and actually give ourselves the possibility of choosing something and saying, do I or don't I? What would work best for me? Where is my agency? Because one thing you don't have a lot of when living with adrenal insufficiency and Addison's disease is control over how it's going to manifest, how it's going to present. So actually being able to say, no, but what I do have control of is what I choose to do, how I choose to use my time, how I choose to prioritize. So actually giving yourself coulds rather than shoulds, I think can be quite helpful in all life, actually, not just in living with
yeah.
adrenal insufficiency.
I know you said sharing that with others as well, sharing that with people we spend time with to help them understand what we're going through, because no one fully gets it until you feel the difference between being tired or a hangover versus adrenal insufficiency and the fatigue that comes with us on our flare-ups and bad days. I don't think you can believe it until you feel it.
Yeah.
So yeah, so sharing that. And if anyone does feel alone, they feel like they don't have a support system who would understand, this is where we say hop onto our online forum, which is packed full. Well, you won't feel rare when you're on there, I promise you. There's loads of us, and you can speak with others about those feelings and get that support from there, which is so important to not feel isolated in that situation.
Yeah. We've also had a couple of questions come through about, I guess, communicating with family and friends. So, two questions. How do you help family understand our condition and how much we can do without feeling like a burden? And also, I guess, a similar theme again is your partner struggling to understand Addison's and how it impacts me. How would I best describe that to him? How can I communicate, I guess, get them to understand how you're feeling and what you've been diagnosed with? The language. Mm.
It's really hard, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's really hard to share our true feelings about something as challenging as this, but also actually we never really want to burden the people that are closest to us, and we don't want to say things that are upsetting to them, and we don't want to make them feel that they're not doing what we need, or they're not able to understand us. So actually finding the place, again, it comes from that repeated phrase, self-compassion. It's okay to let people know how you are or how you aren't. And actually, using a phrase, I feel, can be really helpful, because it's quite difficult for anybody to argue with that. You're the only person that knows how you feel. And if you feel something, it's okay to share it. And we can caveat that with, I know this might feel difficult to hear. This might feel like I'm getting at you. This might feel difficult, but actually, I just want you to know I feel X. I feel that you don't really understand. Can I let you know what's happening for me? Can I actually share with you what's going on? I know
Mm.
you I know you were at the doctor's with me, but I'm not sure you totally get how it's impacting me. You know,
Mm.
this is hard. Those sorts of phrases that you find yourself saying, speaking from yourself, not saying you make me feel that I'm a burden. That's not helpful, because that's actually pointing the finger out there. I feel like I'm a burden to you now that I'm living with this condition. Now, a lot of people will say, don't be ridiculous, of course you're not. But that doesn't change the fact that that's how you feel. So actually just being able to say, no, I know you don't, you don't mean to, or that isn't what you're intending, but that's how I feel, can be really helpful. I think quite often what we have to acknowledge is the way, as I said in the slides, people in our lives process difficult feelings is different from the way we might. So everybody will process and deal with things differently. So that can also be something that's really helpful to acknowledge. You know, I know you don't really like talking about stuff, but there's a lot going on in my mind that I would really like to share with you.
Mhm.
Mm.
That's fantastic, definitely. Because it's so hard, isn't it? We can recognize the practical implications on our loved ones. Like they've literally had to take time off work to drive you to that appointment because you were too ill. They're now stressed out at work as a consequence, so they snap at you that evening. So just to have the open conversation around it is fantastic using that language. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Katie, is there more live ones or go to a pre-submitted? What works?
There is a lot of live questions,
Let's
so
hit those ones then. Go for it.
this is actually a great one. A really in question that came through. I live in fear of a crisis, so that fear around having a crisis or another crisis, I guess, in particular, if someone was diagnosed, right, with a crisis. So this person has had two, and they're terrifying. How do I manage the fear of the ambulance not getting to me in time, or the A&E doctor not being aware of it? This has happened when I had my first crisis. The
That's
fear.
a lot. That's
Mm,
a lot to manage, isn't it? Because those
mm,
are terrifying experiences. And I think actually acknowledging that they were terrifying experiences and you've probably been left with a lot of traumatic feelings around them is important, because we want to be taken care of and we want to feel safe when we feel most vulnerable. So don't, you know, again, be kind to yourself. Don't dismiss it
mm,
as I shouldn't feel that. I
yeah.
think the most powerful thing is, again, be prepared. Speak with Philippa and Katie. They experience these things, they know, but hold on to what you know. It won't We don't know it will always be the same. So when you feel that sense of fear and terror and panic rising, breathe, because in reality, it's going to be harder to manage all of those things if you are panicking and if you are fearful. And I think I'm right in thinking, if we get sort of overly anxious and stressed because we're anxious and stressed, there's even more chance of something going awry and needing to have more intervention. So I think there is something really powerful about acknowledging the experience you had, holding on to the idea that it won't necessarily always be like that. Find that chink of light that you can believe that you will get what you need.
Mm.
Be prepared. Take everything with you. Have it in your bag. Have a, I don't know, what do you do, Philippa and Katie? Do you take, you have your notes, you have everything available, you have
So
your
you have a steroid awareness
road awareness
card,
cards.
you have your hospital folder ready to go. You know, if you're unconscious, hopefully not, but you've got a medical awareness bracelet on. Yeah, those are our medical ID identification options that we have. Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere I go. I've traveled Brazil, I've traveled everywhere. I'll print out stuff in Portuguese in the language of the country as well. Like on the ADSHD website, they have several languages, so I'd highly recommend to go over there if you're traveling. And just being prepared, yeah, just having your kit, your everything with you at all times, your wrist, your medical alert, and just trusting. Really, you can't. Otherwise, you'll let the fear take over. But once you're prepared and you have your wristband, that's in your control, and that's what you can do. That's helped me anyway, I find, just being prepared.
I mean,
Mm.
I think it is really hard when you don't feel that you can trust the service that is there to take care of you. But there is also something about actually really, really sort of again saying, pressing pause and go, no, hold on, it can be different. They could get to me on time. It could be all
Mhm.
right. It could be possible, rather than always focusing on what's not possible. What is possible? It's possible that it could all go okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Exactly. And becoming as educated as you can on the situation as well, because there will, also when you're in that situation and you're like, damn it, this isn't going to plan. I know unfortunately I'm in an A&E that is overrun and they haven't taken notice of my steroid emergency card. That's a very scary experience. But as you recognized, Rebecca, stress doesn't help our situation, either ourselves. So that is when you, as an expert patient, and your rare resilience just really comes into play, and you follow the practical steps that we have on our website for that, to see through the adrenal crisis protocol, and know that people are working to improve the situation as well.
And I think that what you said about being your own advocate, but also taking your advocate with you. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, we can't always guarantee that that person is going to be with us every minute of every day,
Yeah.
but actually just, knowing that there is that person that can step in and speak to all of the things that Philippa and Katie have spoken to around the, stressing your needs and making sure that you are seen and treated appropriately.
Mm. Yeah.
Mm.
And so much of it is the validation and recognizing your fear, isn't it? Like, yeah, you have every right to be
Yeah.
worried about ringing 999 and waiting in A&E and then being an inpatient, especially as you said to Katie, it didn't go well for that person before. And I've had more adrenal crises than I can count, unfortunately, due to like multiple reasons. And not all of them have gone to plan. And it's terrifying, going back into that. So it's acknowledging that, and but going in with that feeling, so you know that you're doing the best for you that you can, and that you will get through the other side, and then deal with the physical and emotional toil on that side
Oh,
as well.
absolutely.
Thank you. Well, we're actually 1 minute until time, although I'm sure we could keep going for hours, unless there's anything bursting, Katie.
Oh, it's so hard. There's so many.
It's so
The
hard, isn't it? I
I
think
know.
this is where we say we continue the conversation on the online forum.
Yeah,
As Rebecca so kindly put her email address there, but also the Wellbeing Hub. I've used your Wellbeing Hub. That's where, the phrase rare resilience really comes from. Pop on one of the Rare Minds podcasts on your dog walk,
great.
all of that sort of thing. They're great, aren't they,
Oh,
Katie?
I love it. Yeah, I've listened to that. It's on Rareminds. It's just amazing. Yeah, take a listen.
So, thank you so much, Rebecca, for your time. And of course, everyone for joining us this evening. The recording will be on our YouTube channel after this, and you'll all get emails about that as well. And thank you for being members of the ADSHG as well and supporting our work. So, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you,
nice rest
Take
of
everyone.
the
care.
evening.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Bye. Thank you,
everyone.
Rebecca.
Bye. Take care.